Good morning, my name is Josh from Cyclones Oz, and here is your detailed weather forecast update, not quite nationwide, for Wednesday the 24th of September 2025. There is not much to talk about around Australia, minus a few showers here and there through the southeast. In fact, Tasmania is having another strong windy or westerly windy day. Strong winds out of the west as a cold front has made passage down in Tasmania, and a few showers making it north into the southeastern parts of Victoria as well. But there's not an awful lot more to talk about around Australia, so I thought that I'd take things up a little bit of a notch here around Australia and actually look international. We do have a very strong typhoon towards our north. I'm sure everybody has heard somewhat in the news of a massive typhoon that's blown through the Philippines and is now heading into Hong Kong and the southeast of China. It's called Super Typhoon Ragasa, and this is a look at the typhoon right now. This is a look at the typhoon's passage through the Philippines. It was an absolute monster, already by far the strongest super typhoon of 2025, and it's likely to be the strongest storm of the year. Hopefully we don't see anything stronger than this around the world, because that truly would be disastrous. But this typhoon here moved north of the island of Luzon in the Philippines, which is about 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers north of Australia. So obviously no impact to Australia at all. It's in the northern hemisphere, and this system has pretty much no bearing on the Australian weather scene. But it is interesting to see what we have in our backyard. And the Western Pacific often throws out absolute monster typhoons like this, and every now and then they do go for the populated islands of the Philippines and then into China. Now, this was a look at the typhoon on Monday when it was at its strongest, moving through the Philippine Sea. It got up to an incredible intensity of Category 5 on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, which is translated to a Category 5 on the Australian scale as well. But we had wind speeds in this super typhoon of up to 310 kilometers an hour. It really was a whopper as it moved through the Philippine Sea and into the northern parts of the Philippines. The typhoon is now moving through the South China Sea right now. In fact, it is located just to the south of Hong Kong. This is a look at the typhoon right now here, with Hong Kong located up here. Some very strong winds through the Hong Kong area as well. The Hong Kong International Airport has had wind gusts up to 130 kilometers an hour, and some strong wind gusts as well around Macau, which is just towards the southwest of Hong Kong. And this storm here is on a collision course with China. It's expected to make landfall in the next 6 to 12 hours into the southeast of the nation, and it's bringing an awful lot of rainfall and an awful lot of damaging to locally destructive wind speeds with it. It really is a scary typhoon and a scary prospect for the southeast of China, likely to be one of their strongest storms in the last few years. This sort of typhoon, or this sort of intensity, is very rare in the Australian region. It really is only the Western Pacific Ocean, which has a vast expanse of very warm sea temperatures and a vast expanse of very favourable conditions for typhoons and systems like this to make the most of. So a system like this is exceedingly rare in Australia, or of this magnitude is exceedingly rare in Australia, but it's always good to have a look further around Australia and have a look at what's happening in our backyard. In terms of the forecast for this typhoon, definitely a serious threat for China. It's also a pretty serious threat for Hong Kong, but I would like to say that the worst is likely in the past now for Hong Kong. This system will continue to bring some very strong winds around the Hong Kong area throughout the next 12 hours or so, but those winds are going to steadily begin to die off. In terms of how many people are expected to be impacted by this super typhoon as it moves through the last parts of the South China Sea and into the southeast of China, we're looking at an estimated 100 to 125 million people, so 5 times the Australian population. An absolute colossal amount of people expected to be impacted by this typhoon, and it really is a menacing system, that's for sure. It's not as strong as what it used to be, but it's still got winds approaching 200 kilometers an hour around its center, and you can see those wind gusts in the less intense part of the storm on the northern side, already well above 110 to 115 kilometers an hour through parts of Hong Kong and China, and those winds likely to get very much a lot stronger in the next couple of hours. Having a look at the forecast modelling here, this is from the ECMWF forecast. You can see wind speeds expected to increase slightly as this system approaches China before weakening off a little bit as it approaches land, and we're expecting sustained winds between 125 to 145 kilometers an hour as this typhoon goes through its landfall process. It's then going to head on towards Vietnam, moving into Vietnam throughout the next 24 to 36 hours as a much weaker typhoon, as it is expected to have a substantial amount of land interaction, and it's not actually likely to be a typhoon by the time it gets to Vietnam because of the land interaction. It's likely to be substantially weaker than that. Wind gusts are another story with this typhoon. In fact, over the next 24 hours, some extreme wind gusts are expected. So let's have a look at the map that's called wind accumulation. This highlights the strongest wind gusts forecast in the selected time period, which is over the next 48 hours, and you can see wide swathes of 200 to 230 kilometer an hour wind speeds are expected through parts of southern China, with the strongest winds expected on that southeast coast as mentioned. Now, the further towards the west you get, the weaker these winds are going to be, but we're still looking at wind gusts approaching 150 kilometers an hour right up towards the China-Vietnam border, and then wind gusts do begin to ease off a little bit as you get in towards the northern part of Vietnam. Around Hanoi, the strongest wind gusts are most likely to be around the 60 to 80 kilometer an hour mark. Still quite a strong impact and likely to cause some damage in the area, but it's not likely to be the catastrophic impact that we're going to be seeing across southern China and the catastrophic impact that we have observed across the Philippines. It truly has been a tremendous storm. And throughout the same time period, this will look at rainfall accumulations, so the heaviest falls expected through these selected periods. You can see rainfall accumulations expected to be between that 100 to 200 millimeter kind of threshold across the southern part of China, and likely some heavier accumulations into some of the mountainous areas around the southern parts of China and across towards into Vietnam. We'll likely be seeing some much heavier rainfall accumulations approaching 250, 300, or even 350 millimeters. That's ballpark between 10 to 15 inches of rainfall. Very significant totals expected indeed, and some of the heaviest rainfall that they've seen all year through this part of China and Vietnam, and it's going to add to what has been one of the wettest years on record for this part of China, so more extreme flooding is expected, and some pretty significant wind damage is also expected as a result. In terms of wave heights, we're looking at some very big waves around this system here, between 10 to 13 meters, with a very short wave period actually, considering this typhoon has came out of pretty much nowhere in the last 3 days. It's really undergone what we define as rapid intensification, intensifying from borderline nothing to a very significant storm in a very short period of time, so that wave period hasn't really had time to catch up, which means these waves and storm surges are going to be extra destructive around the China area and throughout Hong Kong. Massive waves between that 7 to 10 meter mark expected across the south coast of China. And the reason why I'm choosing to take a look at this storm when it doesn't actually impact the Australian region is because our cyclone season is knocking on our door. It's not far away, and it's expected to start earlier and last longer than what it would normally in an average year. So it's always good to be refreshed with these sort of systems. Whilst this is a typhoon, it's a completely different storm. It's not a completely different style of storm. It's still considered a cyclone. It's a rotating low pressure system, but it is in the northern hemisphere, which means it rotates in a completely different way. In fact, it rotates anti-clockwise, unlike our cyclones that rotate clockwise in the Australian region. This typhoon here is a good reminder of what we could potentially be seeing in some of the worst in some of the most favourable conditions around the Australian region, where we're talking about wind speeds up to around that 200 kilometre an hour mark. Of course, wind speeds around 300 kilometres an hour from a tropical cyclone around the Australian region are a completely foreign risk. We do not see those very often at all, but it is again a good refresher from a system that is pretty close to home. So we're thinking of our friends up in the Philippines, we're thinking of our friends in southeast China and around Hong Kong and through Macau and Vietnam. It is a very significant storm threat, that's for sure, and it is an ongoing storm situation throughout this part of the world, a very serious one. The Western Pacific, again, notorious for throwing out systems like this, that's for sure. And we're very thankful actually that Australia is not located in the typhoon highway that is the Western Pacific, because that would be a very serious problem for our eastern states if they were the ones facing it. We actually have it pretty well off in the southern hemisphere around Australia. I'm going to zoom out here and see if I can actually show you and give you a proper demonstration of what I actually mean by that. But you can see the Coral Sea over here and the Indian Ocean over here. Whilst they are large expanses of water, have a look at the South China Sea and even more specifically the Western Pacific Ocean. It is a vast expanse of ocean. It's a vast expanse of water that runs typically a lot warmer than the Australian waters as well. So typhoons up there, they've got more time and more energy available to them to really make the most of, and they can get a lot stronger than the tropical cyclones we see around Australia. So actually, when we do see category 3, 4 and 5 strength tropical cyclones, we do have it quite well off throughout Australia compared to our friends up into the Western Pacific Ocean. But get ready for cyclone season. It is not far away, and we have more information over on the Facebook page as well. But stay safe if you're on the path of Typhoon Ragasa. It is a very serious storm threat, that's for sure. And again, I thought it was an interesting thing to take a look at here on the Cyclone Odds channel. Follow for more, subscribe, and that's going to be all from me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.